All right, let's talk changes because there have been a number of them. And then I am going to show you one of the most epic games of Control and Control that I have had the pleasure of recording, which has not bugged out. It's probably going to be one of the most epic games on my channel out of all of my games. And I've got a couple of hundred, so that's saying something, right? Or roughly a couple hundred. Anyway, so um, first, let's talk changes. So Breya had, in my opinion, to make some adaptations to adjust for the fact that we are now playing at 30 life. It was very sudden and unexpected, but um, the nice thing about control is you can generally adapt to most situations successfully, unless you're talking about entire format rotations that take out like the heart and soul of your tools. But as long as you have the fundamental tools of a control deck, you can generally adapt to most situations. So, what do we do to make the adjustments? Well, I decided that I actually noticed that many times I was not getting Necro because it was too dangerous, because I was so much lower in life than I used to be. Having a quarter less of my life is huge. And so that's like basically Necropotent saying draw 10 less cards, which is a pretty big deal. So I decided to actually try taking it out, and I put Sword of Fire and Ice back in the deck as the card drawing at 3 slot to replace it. The nice thing here is Sword of Fire and Ice also gives me another way to protect Breya. Against certain decks, it can be really a big problem. Obviously, like Nin, for example, which I don't think actually comes up in our game, but I think certainly could. Also, the other thing that's nice about that is it's just more ways to take advantage of Breya's flyers. Sometimes you play Breya, they kill Breya, and all you're left with is a couple 1/1s. If you can grab some equipment, you can rock and roll. So anyway, I swapped that out, and because I did that, I took Urborg out and I made it Inventor's Fair. Inventor's Fair is another way to go get the Sword of Fire and Ice. If I need to draw cards, if I'm mana flooded and I'm just looking for some card draw, I can fetch it. Or I could fetch, for example, Scroll Rack if I have a handful of lands. Or I could fetch Crucible if what I'm looking to do is recur some wasteland action. Or in a really slow game, I could recur the Inventor's Fair itself and then start hitting the other targets. So that kind of between the two, I get two different cards that give me some card drawing for the price of one slot. Losing the Necro allowed me to drop Urborg for Adventurous Fair. It also gives me some life to offset this change to 30, which I think will help. And then with Sword of Fire and Ice being an extra removal card, I may potentially, and also just a good way to throw up a wall, I may actually take less damage early, which it should help with that as well. So that was the first big change. And the irony, of course, is that if you make enough changes to gain life, then all of a sudden the Necro becomes good again, and then you want to put it back in. So we'll maybe come to a day where it does make its way back in, but for now it's out. I didn't stop there though. I also took out the Moxes again only because I wanted to make so many changes. I just didn't have the slots for them. So they came out, but I put in Batterskull, which I think is huge. Batterskull functions as a phenomenal way to protect planeswalkers, protect your life total. It works under humility very well. Gives you the biggest, baddest dude on the board. It's an awesome cheat with Stoneforge Mystic, but it's also a combat trick with Whir of Invention. If you have enough mana, you can sneak a 4/4 and gain some life, have him jump out in the middle of combat, which is fantastic. So Batterskull actually has been playing so well since I added it to the deck that I kind of asked myself why the heck it hasn't been in the deck in the first place. And I have the feeling that even if we were to go back to the 40 life format, it's very plausible I would actually keep Batterskull in the deck. So I'm going to talk about what I swapped out. So Urborg became Inventor's Fair. Necro became Sword of Fire and Ice. And also Batterskull, fetchable with Inventor's Fair. Another nice thing. So Batterskull was swapped out for Terminus. The idea being that rather than sweeping the board, I'm going to play something on the board that's hard to deal with and start accumulating life. And because it is vigilance and they can't swing into me, I just well batter their skull with it while they try to find an answer, which buys me time and gives me the life to play Toxic Deluge if I need to later, or to get Breya down and do something with that. So batter skull is terminus. I also put in I took out. So I had the two delve cards. I took those out and I put my counter spells back in. I put deprive back in and I put condescend back in. And the nice thing with having condescend is, although it doesn't draw cards, it does dig and allows me to find my fantastic cards like Future Sight, Tezzeret, Jason, so on and so forth sooner. So it's not card draw, but it gets you to your card draw quicker while keeping you alive. Whereas Treasure Cruise and Dig had anti-synergy with Yogwill, was very poor with Dark Confidant, and at 30 life, that matters highly. Is extremely dangerous to play those cards and have your opponent possibly mana drain you. So I took them back out, but Condescend's kind of doing some of the same work while also giving me a better early game. So I like that switch. So Terminus, Dig. So for Cruise, it was Deprive. All right. Sword is for Necro, and a Johnny Vengeant. I swapped a Johnny Vengeant into the deck. I wanted even more life gain, and I needed a card that did what. So originally, this slot was actually Anguished Unmaking, and I swapped the Anguish Unmaking for Colligan's Command. I was trying different things because Anguish Unmaking was a little painful, and that was at 40. And then Command was better than Anguish Unmaking, but it was a little hard to use with the red and occasionally not quite getting me where I wanted to be. But really, it was the red cost that was a bit harder to hit on turn 3, but typically by turn 4 I'm a little bit more likely to have red when I want to be playing a Johnny, when I want to be playing Breya. It gives me, so by switching out Anguish Unmaking to a Johnny, I have like one more turn to find my red without having to, stutter on the order of plays. But also this kind of functions in the same way. It doesn't destroy an artifact or a creature or a land, but it pins them. And because Anguish Unmaking actually can't attack land and a Johnny can, it's a little bit better in that sense. Johnny can take out Planeswalkers. I've killed plenty of Jaces with it. And if it goes ultimate, well, then you probably just win the game. And that's really nice because it's a way for you to threaten a deck. Like, for example, you can get in these situations where you have Winter Orb and you have a Johnny and you're using a Johnny to pin down like a Soul Ring or something. And your opponent finally pushes through, like they grip Winter Orb, and then a Johnny's right there at the ultimate, and then you just ultimate and win anyway. So a Johnny has a lot of interesting value, but mainly, it's another way to recoup some of the lost 30 to 40 life stuff. So now that I've talked about all of the changes that I've made to the deck, which I hope you enjoy, I am going to show you the most savage game I've had in forever. So this is going to be long, so settle in if you have that kind of time. These are all the games I played today with the changes. I had a number of games from recently, but I have only implemented the changes you've seen as of today. So literally, this is it. I am not filtering anything here. So this is just the results so far. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the 11th game, that's the doozy against Nerdy Digger. So let's check it out. Nerdy Digger here. I assume he digs the nerds. I don't really know. But I do know that this game is amazing. So I'm going to hit play. I'm just going to let it run. So I had to double mulligan, and I believed I needed to double mulligan. And I thought maybe I was just going to flat out lose the game. However, my top card was a land, so I'm going to play it out. He's playing Nin the Pain Artist, and his deck's based on Brian's. He gets to go first, and he doesn't mulligan. So we're already off to a really bad start. But to top it all off, my hand actually sucks. Sword of Fire and Ice is really good against Nin, but not in my opening hand without like Trinket Mage or Stoneforge or Dark Confidant or something. Scroll Rack is fine, except for the whole double mulligan thing making it much, much worse. At least maybe I can get rid of this sword with it. Crucible's something because my top card is a fetch land, but I got to resolve it against Nin. I don't know how well I'm going to do that with all this other stuff I'm trying to do and going second. Now, if I was going first, then this would be my window right here. If he played turn 2 Nin, I could go for it. But that's not the case. So I'm going to play Talisman. Then I drew Karn, which is even worse. He gets mapped. I drew Inventor's Fair, and I was trying to mentally weigh Inventor's Fair against if it was Urborg here. It's really not much of a difference. So I think Fair has more long-term potential. So far, so good with the change. So he mana drains and uses the mana to Nin for 3 and has a map with 2 counters on it. So given I figure he's going to map and he just used Mana Drain on my Crucible, I go for Breya and he Mana Leaks it, fetches Strip Mine and takes out my red. So I play Scroll Rack and then rack away. Luckily I drew a fetch, both Karn and Sword of Fire and Ice, finding 2 cards that, well, I'm happy to see Shackles in some sense against Nin, but I'm not super happy to see a Scrubland, and really having Shackles here isn't that great. Anyway, my opponent brainstorms. It's a little bit better of an effect right now than a Scroll Rack would be. Probably finding that their Soul Ring. And then decides to go for, I see he plays Chrome Mox. Like, this is just so bad. Imprinting Future Sight, though, which is a big favor for me. I think that was probably a mistake. However, I can see what he was thinking. He's going for Tezzeret. He's putting Crucible together. And by using the Chrome Mox, he was able to potentially work around a counterspell for most of that. And he starts the Strip Mine lock. So I am in deep, deep doo-doo because this Shackles here might save me against Tezzeret, but Nin the Pain Artist, but Nin isn't the problem. So first of all, I'm going to shuffle away those 2 top cards. Fortunately, I only have, one more Plains I can even get? Of course, I can put the Scrubland back and make it 2, but still. And look at that beautiful top deck, a Dark Confidant. So I'm going to play the Scrubland because I need to hit my land drops. But more importantly, as badly as I'd like to scroll rack away the Scrubland for my other Plains-based fetches, I'm going to get this Shackles down now. I have a window to get it down. Basically, I have to get Shackles down to keep Nin from blocking, and I need Confidant to kill Tezzeret. So my opponent, on the other hand, he gets Thought Vessel, Felwar Stone, and I can only hope here that the imprint of Future Sight is going to cost him because the Shackles is going to keep him off Nin. So he has Tezzeret to generate tons of mana over there. Gets to transmute a Muddle. Goes and gets Merchant Scroll. Scrolls for Mystical Tutor. Thankfully not Fire Ice. That would have been disastrous. And then passes the turn with 2 cards in his hand. Alright, so I draw. So I stack, so I gain my life first, of course. I draw with Confidant. Mystical, and I thought about Mystical Tutoring here, but the problem is, so if I Mystical Tutor here and I Telegraph, I go get, like, say, a counterspell, then my opponent gets to Mystical Tutor, and whatever I get, he gets to decide how he wants to respond to that. So since I have Scroll Rack, I can actually use Mystical Tutor as an instant to get a counterspell, so I'm just going to sit and hope that the next card I draw is actually useful, but it's not. It's Imperial Seal. I mean, Imperial Seal is useful, but it's not super useful when you have double tutor like that. So fortunately, I do get Tezzeret off the table. So that's problem 1 gone. I only have about like 6 more problems in play to deal with. My opponent Mystical Tutors 4. Vandal Blast. I am in so much trouble. If that last card in his hand is a counterspell, like if he also gets a Strip Mine here. So in response, of course, I have to Mystical Tutor. Of course, he can't Vandal Blast in response because it's a sorcery. So I go get myself a counterspell, and because Vandal Blast would only give me 1 mana off a Mana Drain, I don't get Mana Drain. I get rather a counterspell that might be harder to play later, especially if he does resolve Vandal Blast. So I'm going to use it now. So he goes for Nin. That's fine. And then he goes for Blast. And I scroll rack into the counter I fetched, which is Stoic Rebuttal. Use it while I can now. Counter, and this also allowed me to play around potential something crazy like Daze that might be in his deck that Brian doesn't use. And I said to hope he didn't have Spell Pierce. The other thing about this, though, is it plays around Spell Snare. So anyway, Inventor's Fair, good, and Confidant up into Imperial Seal. And we get Coalition Relic. So this sucks because I'm really I need to Vandal Blast him to win this game. But I desperately also have to steal his guy. Luckily, I have exactly one island to do it. Because I can't have him activating Nin. Look how much mana he's got over there. He just wins, right? Strip Mined again. No islands for me. So if he can get his Nin back, I won't be able to take it. If I hit island drops consistently, well, there's an island. And an answer to Crucible. And he's only got 2 cards in hand. So I'm definitely going for it. And he has Remand. Crap. So I could Imperial Seal here, but I'm not quite sure like what that is. So I just push for damage and say go. And so he strip mines my Volcanic, and I decide that I'm going to go ahead and just tuck my 2 cards because I'm going to draw 2 next turn anyway, and this way I only take 1 from Imperial Seal. Plus, I will give him information he already has rather than fresh information. And this is nice. Force of Will, if I can find a blue card, I could maybe do something with that. And my opponent has, look at this, Reality Shift on Nin. Exile and manifest my Imperial Seal. So my whole plan to go get Vandal Blast at some point, out the window. And he solved the problem of Nin. Then he makes, I think this was his error. He said later this was his mistake. I think, playing Nin here probably doesn't make a lot of sense given I still have Shackles. Oh no, maybe not. So he was playing Nin here, banking on me not hitting an island. And if he's correct and I do not hit an island, then he probably just wins. So actually he was playing to win here. So that is correct. And as you know, these top 2 cards are not islands, but look at that delicious card. So I have to figure out how to make this work. The problem is I need that land tax to resolve, but I really need Vindicate to kill his Crucible, and I've got to steal his Nin. And I actually have enough mana exactly to do all of it, but not enough to do all of it and wasteland one of his 2 untapped blue mana sources. So I decide to scroll rack and try to find a blue card. Oh, maybe I did put. I guess I did put Force Will back. Oh no, that's what it was. I didn't have an island. I'm sorry. I had no island. So I rack for 2, not giving up the 2. And my thought is, if I don't hit an island in those 2, I'm gonna have to Vindicate Nin rather than Crucible. And I just have to assume that this stuff's gonna resolve. Because what else can I do? So I go tax, steal his guy, and now I can't Vindicate, but I have tax down, and we're just gonna have to Vindicate another time. All right, so he fabricates on his turn, and he goes and fetches Vedalken Shackles back. So he's gonna get Shackles, and he's gonna strip mine Inventor's Fair, actually choosing the Fair over the island, which is interesting. And then steal my Confidant. So I won't get to. We can play a back and forth game with the Shackles, but I'm not going to get to draw off Confidant. Fortunately, I have a much more efficient draw engine, which is tax rack. And I screw up here and I untap. This makes no sense at all. And I untap Vedalken Shackles and put myself in a super big bind. Because now I've got to spend mana on Vindicate, but I also have to spend mana on Scroll Rack, but I also have to spend mana on Vedalken Shackles. Yeah, I screwed this one up. I don't know what I was doing there. And we have a quick discussion about how bad that was. So anyway, so I decided I'm going to rack away, well, of course, the islands. Sword of Feast and Famine, I'd love it, but I don't see it resolving right now. And Thran Dynamo, I'm just looking for a counterspell or something. Well, I get fetch lands, which is nice, and a Swords of Plowshares, good too. So I'm going to try to vindicate. And I decide that as much as I want to deal with the Crucible over there, recurring strip mine, it's more important for me to deal with Shackles and get my Confidant back because I need to keep drawing cards. And I still also need to solve Nin, but this will allow me to solve Nin as well. Luckily, I have the one island. He chose not to kill it last turn. He got the Inventor's Fair. I think he was looking at my life total and the manipulations I was doing with the Confidant, and he decided that he's going to grind me down and win that way. So now he kills the island correctly. Um, I'm taxing first, of course. And I'm going to have to take a risk on what I draw. Fortunately, it's just Impulse. I take 2. Could have been, Karn. After that, I go ahead and scroll rack away. Impulse top, island, marsh flat. Actually, I think I scroll away the whole entire junk because some of those cards are decent. Some of them are possibly useful, but going one card deeper and potentially finding, say, Force of Will or something seemed a lot better. I put Swords of Plowshares on top in case things go wrong. Get a Felwar Stone down. I tap my island here because he's probably going to attack my island. So even though I want to leave blue untapped, I'd rather use the mana now and leave Scrub untapped. This allows me also to brainstorm into Swords to Plowshares if I have to. And I push a little bit more damage through. I'm not using Nin because I may actually just have Nin ping itself off or possibly ping the morphed Imperial Seal. If I need to get that Swords to Plowshares into my hand, because if I do, I want to draw the swords before I start my turn so that I can tax, so I can do more tax racking and not worry about shuffling it off. So he does, as anticipated, he kills the island, and so because I want the swords in my hand, I really considered going for it right there, but I decided I'm going to charge a relic anyway, and I'm just going to stack the Confidant because I'd rather have more mana this turn, so I just stack the Confidant to put swords into my hand first that way. So this stacking is all intentional. This is great. I have Tithe now. I can draw 2 lands, play one of them, and rack the other one away. So I'm very excited about that. I Tithe, and he has strip mined every single plains out of my deck. So actually, if you're checking, I'm down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 lands in my graveyard, and I'm still taxing away 2 islands every turn. I also just played a card that was 1 white, do nothing. That's awesome. I somehow forgot the situation with my deck. I should have been paying more careful attention. So another mistake on my part. Anyway, so I rack into this hand here. My opponent's got 4 cards left. And I play Talisman thinking that I'd really like to get the Jitse down. But because my life total is getting a little bit low, uncomfortably low, but I am not sure how badly I want to. Like, I may need to deprive and mana leak. And I had to play the Talisman because I need more blue sources that he can't strip mine. So he will, again, strip mine an island. So I'm down to no islands. Again. And he plays Flame Tongue Kavu, targeting Nin. So I think about that for a little while and decide. He has played a land, so unless he has like Mana Crypt or some kind of Lotus Petal or something, he can't play a land and then Rift me because he's 1 mana shy. So I'm going to take a risk here and get a little greedy, but I'm going to draw a card off a Nin in response to Flame Tongue's ability because I want the Swords to Plowshares back in my hand. Or no, excuse me, I want the Brainstorm back in my hand. Because underneath the Brainstorm was the Swords of Plowshares. And so by putting the Brainstorm in my hand, I can now stack it with Confidant on top, and I'm guaranteed to only take 1 damage, which I'm trying to both kill the Flame Tongue Kavu and just take 1 damage this turn. His life total certainly is relevant. All right, so I take white off of the effect and plow that. Before we do anything else this turn, let's see if he's going to be foolish enough to fight over this. He is not. So I'm going to Enlighten 2. I need to get more mana. I need more and more and more and more mana. That's what I'm hungry for right now. And as crazy and risky as it seems with this life total, the land I want, or the mana source I want, and I have to decide exactly how I'm going to rack here. Eventually, I settle on keeping what? There we go. I kept Deprive, Jitte, and Leak, and I actually fetched myself a mana Crypt. So the top card is now Mind Twist. So I fetch Crypt. I'm able to play another source of blue. It's not an island though. Play the mana Crypt and cast a Jitte. This is just total bait spell. He counters it, and I am perfectly fine with that. I actually just wanted to get. It was as much as I'd like the life off of Jitte. There are other ways to gain life in this deck, so I'm not super worried about it. And Jitte is good against him, but I already have Shackles, which is good. Um, so I just wanted to basically duress a Hinder out of his hand. I didn't know it was going to be Hinder, but that was the thinking. Now I could have Vandal Blasted his Crucible here, and just for one right there, and still add 4 mana up for 2 different counter spells. But I figure if I can actually resolve Vandal Blast kicked or overloaded, then I probably win the game. So rather than go for the value play, which probably is a reasonable play, I'm going to wait until I can get the big, the money shot here. Now the other thing is, as powerful as it is for my opponent to be strip mining me every turn, imagine like flip it in your head, right? Imagine if I had Crucible Worlds and I had a strip mine in my graveyard, and every turn I replay this strip mine and I destroy one of my opponent's lands. So how would that be different from what's happening now? In terms of the board, it would be identical. And it would be the play that I would make. So once I have Tack Track going and a Confidant, and I'm drawing 4 cards per turn, in my mind, when he strip mines me, I'm strip mining him because he's not hitting a land drop. So as weird as it is, my opponent playing strip mine and using it is the exact same thing I would do, except in reverse, if I had the Crucible. So I'm not going to bother fighting over the Crucible at this stage in the game. Now that I've developed, I'm just going to continue to develop alternate mana sources, and we're going to go for the big win with the Vandal Blast. So what I really want to do is for him to do nothing relevant this turn and Mystical Teachings of Force of Will, and then I'm thinking I probably got it. So he plays Metamorph, and I think about it. Is there anything in play that's significantly a problem if he copies it? There really isn't. And Metamorph is just one more card. We're getting up to Vandal Blast territory, so that's just another target. So we'll let that slide. When he copies Scroll Rack, then I realize this game's almost over. That's a desperation play. He's looking to find more counter spells. So he racks, or he's trying to find a solution for Shackles, or maybe he's trying to find his Quake. But the problem is, see, early, well, not Flame Tongue Kavu, but the imprint here actually turned out to be really a big deal much later in the game. So, yeah, I think he's probably looking for his Quake, actually. Quake for 2 would be a good start to get him back in the game, although Tack Track is still breaking his back pretty hard. So, all right, it's going to cost me a life, but I'm going to Mystical Teachings at the end of his turn in an attempt to go get Force of Will. He's smart enough to realize that that's exactly what I'm doing, and that if I do get Force of Will, whatever I want to resolve will resolve. So he's just preemptively Stoic rebuttaling that, which is fine because I'm really looking at his mana versus how many threats I can play and what I can counter. Again, I know what the top card of my library is. The other thing is, and I told him this too after the fact, that Teachings right there, I actually did not want that to resolve. I was very much hoping that what just happened would, because I stacked my top card to not kill me, which is why I order my effects this way, and also to be a very good card against him right now. It is the Mind Twist. So now we're gonna. So actually, I played that with the strong hope that he was going to counter it. I really wanted that to happen, and that's what happened. So things are looking really good now. Once you're playing the game and you can play your opponent, and look at that beautiful top deck. All right, so First, I'm going to lead off with. Now I get a little excited here. I should have let off with Mind Twist, just a gentle Mind Twist for 1, which is 50% of his cards. Then if he counters back, and I counter that with a Leak, the Mind Twist for 1 takes the last card out of his hand. If he doesn't counter back, he doesn't have a counter, because when you only have 2 cards in 1 counter, well, I don't know. Maybe I guess you take the risk. Maybe I should throw it for 2. I probably have enough mana, so maybe that would have been the play prior to playing Dak Faden. But I decided I'm going to lead off with Dak and test the waters this way, only because I wasn't quite like I was trying to work out exactly how I wanted this turn to play out. And I actually don't care if Dak doesn't resolve, but it's so much better if it does. So in response, he fetches, and yeah, okay, here's the start of the counter war. Wait a minute. He's impulsing. That is not good for my opponent. If he has a counter here, I'm definitely countering. But okay, I think the replay is going to bug out. But here's how the turn finished. He didn't find a counter. Dak Faden hits the board. I steal Crucible, pop out Inventor's Sphere. I actually don't have a Strip Mine to get, but I really want the Inventor's Sphere because I actually am this 10 life I'm a bit nervous about. So I pop the Inventor's Sphere back out. Plus I can use Inventor's Sphere next turn to complete the lock by fetching Sword of Feast and Famine. So anyway, I pop out the Inventor's Fair, and then I hit him for a 2-point Mind Twist, taking 2 cards out of his hand that he could not play. One of which was land, and the other one was, I don't remember, but considering he has a scroll I can play and he just basically shuffled, he would have had a chance to look at 3 new cards, so that was really good. After that, I run out the Vendel Blast, and he has an empty hand, and I'm sitting on exactly 2 mana for Deprive. And I blast away his whole board except for that Crucible, which is now working for me, and hit him for 4, taking him to 5. So on the next turn, he draws and says go, or draws and casts Nin or something. Nothing important, though. On my turn, I tax track again. I do not die from Dark Confidant. I stack my effects. I have a Confidant and a Crypt going, so I order my effects such that I gain the life going to 8, and then I actually, oh, that's what it was. I don't tax. I actually decline on tax, and I scroll rack the lands back so that I will not die, because I have the game in the bag, right? So I draw an island again, and then from there, I hit him down to 1. I don't actually fetch with Inventor's Fair. I just hit him down to 1, replay a land from the graveyard. I cast my commander, sacrifice my Mana Crypt and a flyer, and do the last point of damage to him, and that's how the game ends. So that was an insane game. I have 55 cards. Actually, considering I'm about to draw, so I actually draw a few more cards. I've gone through something like 47. He's gone through 33. So all told, 80 cards between the two of us. We lucked out. The replay doesn't bug out. But it was an epic slugathon, super satisfying, and the good guys win. So I hope you enjoyed watching that video. Although I will say I had a nice chat with Nerdy Digger here, and he seems like a good guy too. So anyway, if you get a chance to play him, I would recommend it. So I hope you enjoyed it. It was I just, you don't get games like that, and when you do, most of the time the replay bug kills it, and for some reason it didn't happen this time. I can't believe it. If you only knew how many games you haven't gotten to see that were along those lines, all because of the replay bug. But who knows? Maybe with this recent patch they've done something about it. I don't know. And you can see I was really thinking about running Snapcaster into this deck since I upped the equipment by 2. But since Batterskull is a creature, I decided not to. I would rather play Condescend and Deprive, and we'll worry about Snapcaster some other time. I don't like how he interferes with Humility. So anyway, that's all I've got for you. Thank you for watching. I'm interested in, as always, in your comments and thoughts. If you enjoyed the game, certainly interested in your thoughts on the changes to the deck and any other suggestions or comments you'd like to make. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.